Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Hope Miller Show. This is a project I've been working on for a while, thinking about, praying about, writing for, and I'm just so excited that I'm finally sharing it with you guys and that you're here watching it. Now, before we get into the content of this episode, I want to do a quick introduction of who I am, and I also want to explain a little bit about what this show is all about. I gotta do that thing where I tell you to subscribe and like and click a bunch of buttons, so if you could do that, that would be great. It helps the algorithm push my videos out to more people, and who knows, maybe a woman who has just found herself pregnant and doesn't know what to do might be touched by one of my videos and choose life for her baby. So one simple click could save a life. So that is my way to get you to like, subscribe, share, whatever buttons you want to click. And now let's get into the video. Now, if you want to skip the introductions and get right into the content, just skip to this point here and I'll see you over there. For those of you who decided to stay, hi, my name is Hope and I am a full-time pro-life activist. I've actually been an activist my whole life. My grandfather, Joe Scheidler, is the godfather of the pro-life movement. So I'm sure, as you could imagine, I've attended many pro-life events. However, it became very personal for me around the age of 12. That's when I learned how the real world worked and I realized that people were participating in an act that could very well bring another person into this world, and yet they want to shirk away from the responsibility and a child would end up dead. This didn't make sense in my 12-year-old little brain, and I knew I had to fight against it. However, I said people willingly participating in an act that could bring a child in this world. So what about the people who didn't willingly participate in an act? People who were rape victims? This is a question I really wrestled with. And so I did tons of research to find the answers to that one question. Well, in this time, I did so much research, I actually became more and more convicted in my pro-life beliefs. And from then on, I took on an independent role in the movement for the unborn. I was the president of my pro-life group at my church, the Crusaders for Life, for 3 years. I had the honor of working for Abby Johnson, Lila Rose, Sidewalk Advocates, Illinois Right to Life. I've been able to work alongside many incredible organizations such as March for Life, Leadership Institute, 40 Days for Life, etc. And it has truly been the greatest joy of my life to serve these unborn children and their mothers. Now, just about a year ago, full circle moment, I was hired on at the Pro-Life Action League, an organization my grandfather started back in 1980. I now work for them full-time as a director of youth outreach, and it is the best job. Now, I have so many crazy stories to tell you guys, and I'm sure they're gonna come out as this show goes on. Now that we have an overview of who I am, let's get into the overview of what this show will be. Now, I was incredibly active on social media for 4 years. I posted nearly every day, if not twice a day. I was constantly sharing my thoughts on the movement, news, happenings, ways to get involved, little snippets here and there, 15-second videos, 1-minute videos. But about a year ago, I felt a real call to take a step back from that and to stop posting on social media in that capacity. It gave me so much freedom to focus on my in-person activism, encouraging others to join me on the streets as we defend the unborn. This last year was a major reset for me. I relearned what it meant to be an activist. So with my now 8 years of being a front lines activist, I am ready to share with you what it means to be an activist. This show, The Hope Miller Show, is a sort of how-to be a pro-life activist. I'm gonna go over how-tos. I'm gonna go over different types of activism. I'm gonna go over what's happening in the pro-life movement so you're as up-to-date as possible on the happenings in the abortion industry and the pro-life movement. I might even go over some legal stuff, your rights as an activist. I'm gonna talk about the sad things. I'm gonna talk about the nitty-gritty hard things, the heartbreaking things that the abortion industry is responsible for. But I'm also gonna talk about the blessings, the miracles, and the victories of the pro-life movement. I'm gonna share with you my own failures as an activist and my victories as an activist. And I'm also going to give you all of my tips and tricks, all of my resources, and maybe we'll even have some guests on later down the line. But for now, let's get into our very first episode. Trying to figure out a first episode has got to be one of the hardest things about starting anything. So this past week, as I am very intensely praying about this show, I am also preparing for a Planned Parenthood protest. And I realized this episode is about Planned Parenthood. They are our #1 enemy in the pro-life movement. So we need to address who they are, what they do, and if they might hopefully be on their downfall. Here are some quick facts, what you need to know about Planned Parenthood. The most important thing, and if you don't remember anything else from this video besides this thing, you're good. Planned Parenthood is America's #1 abortion provider. They perform over 390,000 abortions every year. That is roughly 42% of all abortions done in the United States. 1 out of every 5 clients that visit Planned Parenthood will get an abortion, and Planned Parenthood makes roughly $230 million off of dismembering, poisoning, and killing unborn children every year. That is roughly 60% of their annual income. Planned Parenthood has been caught shielding child predators, lying about what services they provide, deceiving government officials, defying state and federal laws, and submitting fraudulent medical claims. Planned Parenthood has been investigated by the Department of Justice and the FBI for its role in harvesting and selling baby parts. Planned Parenthood also exaggerates its roles in providing health care for women. Planned Parenthood provides less than 1% of clinical breast exams, less than 1% of Pap tests, and 0 mammograms annually. Women cannot go to Planned Parenthood for basic healthcare needs such as a cold, back pain, bodily injury, or mental health issues. Despite their name, Planned Parenthood offers almost no prenatal care, which amounts to less than 0.1% annually. Planned Parenthood offers no pediatric care, a primary concern of many women, and even instructs women not to bring their children into their facilities. So that's a very brief overview of Planned Parenthood and what they do or don't do. Now, when I first heard of Planned Parenthood, I was very little. In fact, I remember asking my mom, why are we protesting Planned Parenthood? Isn't that a good thing that they're helping you plan your parenthood? She said, on the contrary, they're actually not helping you plan your parenthood, they're helping you end your parenthood. And as time went on, I learned more and more about the evils of Planned Parenthood. Starting out, I watched Lila Rose's undercover videos of her going into Planned Parenthood. I heard stories of women who were hurt and abused by Planned Parenthood. I even worked for an organization called And Then There Were None, where their focus was actually helping people leave the abortion industry. I interviewed many women who worked for them and heard horror stories of what it was even like to work at Planned Parenthood. And recently, I've been sidewalk counseling at Planned Parenthood. Now, when you think about the pro-life movement, you might think of dozens of different organizations. I mean, there are hundreds, maybe even thousands of different pro-life organizations led by different incredible pro-life activists. And when you think of the abortion industry, you think of one major organization, that being Planned Parenthood. And while I think it's incredible we had so many different activists all so passionate about the movement, I always kind of wondered, were they onto something, having one organization be the face of their movement? I thought maybe, until recently. I believe Planned Parenthood is on the decline. And with Planned Parenthood being on the decline, the entire abortion industry is on the decline. I believe the pro-life movement is finally winning, and here's why. Now, I first noticed that Planned Parenthood might be suffering when in February of this year, I was informed that 4 Planned Parenthood facilities in the state of Illinois, where I live, would be shutting their doors for good. Funding has gone down dramatically. Their business has gone down dramatically, especially with the uptick of using the abortion pill. There's really not as much need to go in person to a clinic. Now, I saw these 4 clinics closing as a major victory, but it also made me realize that Planned Parenthood must be really struggling if they're closing 4 clinics in a state like Illinois. Then, just 2 weeks later, an article was posted by the New York Times that blew my mind. The article is titled, "Botched Care and Tired Staff, Planned Parenthood in Crisis." When a news outlet like the New York Times, a very liberal, biased news outlet, puts out an article that says botched care, Planned Parenthood in crisis, something is terribly wrong. Now, of course, this is not a pro-life article. That would never happen in the New York Times. It instead blames the botched care on being short of cash because they're spending all their time in legal battles. They say that the botched care is because many are operating with aging equipment and poorly trained staff because the turnover rate is so bad because they can't seem to pay their employees very well because they're spending all their money on legal battles. Now, Planned Parenthood actually had an uptick in donations after Roe v. Wade was overturned. However, in this article, they admit that very little of that money is actually going to helping women and instead is going to all these legal battles. They also shared a few brief stories of women who have sued Planned Parenthood for botched care. And Planned Parenthood is not taking responsibility for this botched care. Here's a few of those stories. One woman sued Planned Parenthood because she claimed Planned Parenthood improperly implanted her birth control advice, causing nerve damage. Another woman had a botched abortion, with Planned Parenthood staff claiming that they saw a dead fetus. However, after going to the emergency room, she found the baby was still inside of her, alive. She gave birth a few hours later, but then the baby died. She also sued Planned Parenthood. Another woman was given an IUD, except the clinician inserting the IUD did not realize the patient was 4 months pregnant. She gave birth a few hours later to a stillborn baby. She also sued Planned Parenthood. Rather than just admitting that abortion hurts women, they are instead asking for more money. If you want to read this article in full, it is linked below. So I had two major cues that Planned Parenthood was seriously struggling and on the decline. But then my third cue came in. Now today, the day that I'm filming this video, April 2nd, I actually went downtown Chicago to participate in a nationwide protest against Planned Parenthood and calling for our government to defund Planned Parenthood. Today, our United States Supreme Court heard a case on whether or not states have a right to defund Planned Parenthood by excluding Medicaid funding. The case, Medina versus Planned Parenthood South Atlantic, involves an ongoing legal battle over whether or not states can redirect medical funds away from organizations like Planned Parenthood. Alliance Defending Freedom is actively defending this position, arguing that Medicaid funds should not support abortion providers, which they consider to be life-ending procedures, which they are. If the United States Supreme Court decides that states like South Carolina actually have a right to defund Planned Parenthood in this way, this could truly end Planned Parenthood. State funding accounts for nearly $70 million of their annual budget, which is roughly 20 to 25% of their annual budget. A hit like that closes any business's doors, especially an organization like Planned Parenthood. Now, we won't know until June or July what the Supreme Court decides on this case, but I'm hopeful that Planned Parenthood will soon be defunded on the state level. And we very well could see a shift in our nation in regards to the number of abortions that are happening annually. Now, before we close out this video, I want to make sure it is abundantly clear that defunding Planned Parenthood would not reduce funding for women's healthcare. I'm actually hopeful that it would redirect funding for women's healthcare to truly help women and not simply kill their babies and put a band-aid on it like Planned Parenthood does. Now, I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video and tuning in. If you would like to support my work in any way, make sure to click the link below. I love to be able to do this work for you guys, and it is only possible through your generosity. So click the link below and help support the show today.